the Bane Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Bane Free Radio Hour. Today we bring you part 2 of Sean Hazlett's interview of John Ringo and Lydia Sherrer on their latest book, Behind the Veil, the third in the Transdimensional Hunter series. After that, we jump into part 22 of the serialization of Mark Van Name's John and Lobo novel, One Jump Ahead.
Who was exactly what you would expect.
So John,
I am an expert. I was a member of the Clinton Treasury Department. And
this isn't Robert Reich, is it?
No. Robert Reich was actually the Secretary of the Treasury. This was a lower level guy. He used to be on Bane's bar, and he was a real pain in the butt. He did read Bane books, but he was like, anyway, he was the guy that I was lampooning there.
So John, I was going to circle it back around to the TD Hunter series.
The actual thing we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, well, so I was going to ask you.
We got time. Well,
the past, for Behind the Veil, for that particular book, we were kind of working real hard to get it out to Tony and team by a certain time to make sure they would be able to put it out in time. And I was just curious. I never really got to have not too much back and forth with you about, what you thought about it beyond just, it's good, it's great. Here's the changes, moving on. So I was curious if you could maybe tell, the Bane audience, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed most about, you've got your original envisioning that started the first book, and then I've kind of taken it and grown it from there, and we've collaborated, and you've helped, round out some ideas and stuff. What's some of the stuff you've enjoyed the most, maybe in terms of characters or certain scenes or mechanics or whatever, about the TD Hunter universe so far that maybe you're hoping to see more of, either in anthologies?
I like the characterizations. All books should be about characters. So I very much like the way that the characters are written and the way they interact. One of the main things that I've liked about it, though, is you've got a fantastic capability for creating the sense of wonder of the universe and the little details about what it will be like to live in the future that is not, 2001. One of the things we missed in it, and I don't want to try to build it in at this point, but one of the things that, like, as a reader of it, and the things that you have built into it as a reader of it, I'm wondering about what the space program is like.
Yeah. Well, because TD Hunter is so focused on, like, the transdimensional threat.
If you're going to do an anthology in that universe,
true.
One of the things would be somebody who is, a space nerd.
Yeah.
Not necessarily about the details of the space program, but, if civilization collapses, can we reboot on Mars?
Yeah.
Are we at the point that we can reboot on Mars? Because they're not on Mars, they're on Earth.
But who says if they take over Earth, who says they won't spread to Mars? That's a question that would have to be answered, because it
doesn't actually make any sense in terms of the technology of the TDs, if you think about it.
Yeah,
because
well, I mean,
TDs would have to have something like instantaneous over vast distance communication.
Well, so we're talking about quantum entanglement, which is a plot point in the fourth book.
Right. Okay.
But it's short. But it's short.
The universe is saying that TDs cannot communicate across interplanetary distances, because
I will agree with that.
Remember our backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Hit mute, guy. Remember, our backstory is that these things have spread. No, not. Nobody can hear this. Stop. We're actually going to do a moment where
Sean can cut it out.
No, can you do it where the okay? So Sean,
you'd have to type it in the chat.
When you edit this, Sean, when you edit this, Sean,
you can
your
unmute
mic is
yourself,
muted.
Sean. You can unmute yourself, Sean.
Take your mute off.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. I just turn in the episodes. I don't
okay.
edit. So
Okay.
John, you should type it. You should type it.
Type
John.
it in the chat. Private chat.
Yeah.
He's like, chat. What chat? I'm not going to copy.
Okay, Sean. When you edit this, you need to edit this next part out. Okay, Sean. And then from that point, right where I said this is the part you actually need to edit out. Don't edit it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the backstory of the universe that the readers aren't supposed to know. And if you can go, put up something that says like they thought I had made it so you can't hear what they're talking about.
Hold on.
I lied and told them I could do it so you couldn't hear what they were talking about. But actually do edit all of this stuff out so they don't know it's a setup. Now, Lydia, stop laughing. All right, so we're okay, Sean. So they're not actually going to be able to hear what we're saying, right?
No, not at all.
Okay. So remember, the backstory is that the TD hunters are coming from that one, or the TDs are coming from that one particular point, right? So as they spread, they can only be a certain distance apart, Lydia. That's why they can't be on Mars.
Ah, okay.
You got that?
Right.
Okay.
All right, got it.
All right, go back. And we're back. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, we're back. Yeah.
So
well, John, I'm curious if someone asked you who was your favorite character in the TD Hunter universe, would you have like a person or a couple people who is your favorite character?
You mean other than Lynn?
I mean, I don't know. Is Lynn your favorite character?
Probably Mac.
Mac's a lot of fun.
Of the main team, probably Mac.
Yeah.
Dan really doesn't. I mean, Edgar is the obvious second choice, other than Lynn.
Yeah.
Edgar is the. Everybody likes a Samoan.
Yeah.
I have never met a Samoan I didn't like. Okay.
Has Griffin told you his Samoan story?
Oh boy.
No. I'd love to hear Griffin's Samoan story. I've known a lot of Samoans. I have never. I was in a Waffle House. I mean, this was back in the 1980s in Georgia, near Warner Robins, and the cook. I'm looking at this guy from behind, and I go, he's either Hawaiian or Samoan. And when I see him actually interact, I will know which. And so he interacts with somebody, I go, okay, he's a Samoan. Because Hawaiians can sometimes be pretty not friendly. Samoans are always the friendliest guys right up until either one, they get drunk, or two, you really took them off. You have to work to kick off a Samoan. You don't have to work to kick off a Hawaiian. In a Polynesian native of Hawaii, you don't have to work to take one of those guys off on average. Samoans, you've got to work to take them off. And anyway, so the waitress was busy, and I go, Samoan? And he goes, how did you know that? I said, I dealt with a lot of them in the Army. I love you guys. He goes, I'm getting ready to join the Army. And I go, you'll be great. But
Edgar is certainly a lot of fun.
I didn't like. I'm sure that there are Samoans out there that I would not like, but I've never met one I didn't like. So everybody likes a Samoan.
I feel like Dan is too obsessed with gaming to have a whole lot of personality. Like, he's got personality, but it's all like tied up in obsession with the game and like cheat codes and like all the like. He's just really obsessed with gaming. Right. So whereas Mac has a little bit of a personality outside of it. So. Steve is my favorite character. He's the one I enjoy the most. Steve Riker is my favorite character.
Okay.
And why is that?
Huh?
I really enjoy getting to write Steve's blooming father figure relationship with Lynn, whose father died when she was very young. Well, not very young, about 8 or 9 years old, I believe. And so it's a really fun dynamic to get to write. And then in book 4, there's some fun stuff that happens with Steve. I'm not going to say anything because it's definitely spoilers. John knows what I'm talking about, but there's some fun stuff. And people who have read the E-arc of book 3 will know where I'm going with that. It starts in book 3. But if you haven't read
Beyond the Veil,
3
is
yet.
Behind the Veil not out yet?
Yeah, Behind the Veil. Come
Oh,
on,
it is.
John. Come on. You know the release dates of your own books. August 5th. August 5th is the release date. You better post on your Substack when that book comes out. You better be like, all right, guys, here it is. Go get it. August
You're going
5th.
to be in trouble, John, if you don't.
Oh, yeah.
Lydia's going to show up at your house.
August when?
5th. It's a
5th.
Tuesday. Bane books always come out the first Tuesday of the month. August 5th.
The last time I had a book release party or anything along the
I'm
line,
not talking about a book release
No.
party.
the last time I did that was for Gust Front. And
That was a long time ago.
oh yeah. Were you born in
Yes.
2000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm not that young. I have 4 children. I've been publishing for 10 years.
But I have never been one to keep up with my release dates. That's like, I just don't. I never know when my books are being released. People will be like, when's the next book being released? When's this coming out?
Yeah. Well, John, you pre-schedule stuff on Substack, correct? You pre-stuff posts on Substack? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all you have to do is tonight, as soon as this interview is done, write up a little, by the way, Behind the Veil is out. Here's links on Amazon because the pre-order and the current and the release links are the same. Here's the links. Go get it and schedule that to come out on August 5th.
I'll just do a pre-order thing.
Or that, yeah. I mean, just schedule it to come out August 5th so that people can or whatever. Whatever, John. You do you. Right. I market in addition to, for any listeners who aren't familiar.
And again, it was one of those things when, up to about 2012, I did an awful lot of marketing.
Yeah.
And then a lot of things kind of fell
well,
off.
Social media started to get big, and there were some shenanigans on social media that, from what I hear, were very unpleasant for you, and you pulled back to an extent on those platforms. But
there's a lot of other stuff going on too.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I was going to say something about the book release, and it has just poof from my mind. If I remember it, I will.
Well, pre-order comes out August 5th.
Yes, absolutely. Pre-order it, grab it. Dang it, I don't remember what it was. Well, if it comes
order
out.
it early and often.
Order it, pre-order it right now.
Order early and often. One of the things to do is, besides pre-order on whatever online you do, is if you still have a local bookstore that you occasionally frequent, go to the local bookstore and pre-order it, even if you're not actually going to buy it, because then they have to put it up on the shelf.
That's
not that I am additionally or not that I am officially endorsing pre-ordering stuff you're not actually going to purchase, but if you happen to be the kind of person who's cool doing that is a thing you can do. I will say, I don't know
if you pre-order from a bookstore, go ahead and buy it. But you try to pre-order from bookstores, because the more books that go into bookstores, like if they get a pre-order for something, they will buy a second one frequently.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it won't sell if people don't see it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you're just a person who likes to support Bane books, if you're a person who likes to support John Ringo or Lydia Sherrer, pre-ordering on Amazon is useful, but Amazon can always get the book.
Yeah.
And if people are looking for it, they can always find it, because you just type in Behind the Veil, John Ringo, Lydia Sherrer, and it pops right up. Bookstores, it's a little bit more about, you have to kind of, go out there and do
there's no reason for them to put anything but the guaranteed sales bestsellers on their shelves unless they have some indication something's going to sell, because space is at a premium. So I mean, it makes perfect sense. The more people who go into bookstores and personally ask for the book, the bigger chance that there's going to be books on the shelf when it comes out.
And places like Barnes and Noble have been decentralized. They're no longer centralizing book buying. Right.
You can also ask your library to order it.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, of all John Ringo books, is the one that would, this one is actually very YA in that all the cursing is gone.
Well, which is funny because I come on Larry scenes and we're like, Larry is a foul-mouthed, like, I want to write Larry cussing up a storm and I can't. It's rather frustrating, but oh well.
I think we literally ought to just put beep.
You know what? Like, one of these days, John, one of these days, what we need to do is
where he's doing that interview, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where Larry gets interviewed, and
we had to censor you. We censored you, John.
I wrote it with the F-bomb everywhere,
and we censored you.
John, we can't have the F-bomb in the book because we can't get into school libraries if we do. And I'm like, and what we should have done with it was literally just bracket, beep, close bracket, right?
Yeah, bleep it out. Yeah.
Or expletive deleted,
Because Larry is that guy, except it's actually Lynn being Larry.
Yeah.
Lynn edits Larry.
Well, you know what's kind of funny is that
there was a thing that I saw, and it was safety briefing, old school or new school, which do you prefer? And
I've seen
new school was like doing, being unpleasant with people. This is unacceptable. Being, doing this, excessive drinking is unacceptable. That's the new school thing, right? And the old school thing was this, and you can tell it was because he was wearing BDUs, right? The 1980s look, and it's this black guy. I couldn't see what his rank was, and
he was a Marine, though, right?
Green. He was like First Sergeant Green. He could not do an entire sentence without at least one, preferably 4 uses of the word of the F-bomb, right? Every single sentence it was do, and you and bring any of them effing hoes into my barracks, I will F you up.
Mm-hmm.
I will F up your hoe, I will F you up, right?
Well, I actually have.
You could give them that briefing and they would still do that stuff. You're still picking up people from jail. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually
been there, done that.
would love to write a book that has a lot of profanity in it because it is a lot of fun. It's very cathartic in certain scenes to be able to write strong language. And I don't mean strong like vulgar, like not people being nasty to each other, but just like John was just saying. Yeah, it's an art form, exactly. Like that, yeah. I would have that video of a black what do you say, drill sergeant or whatever from the A's, whatever, using all those expletives, and like that's hilarious to me. I think that's hilarious, and that's the kind of thing that I would enjoy writing like once or twice, not as a brand for all my books, but just like with this specific story. Like maybe I have a ghost in me somewhere too for the expletives, not for the sexual content. That would be a lot of fun to do an uncensored Larry Coughlin like novella or something or short story. That would be fun. I don't know what Bain would do with it. Bain probably wouldn't be able to put it anywhere, but it would be funny. So maybe, no, I don't know. It had to be it can't be under a pen name, like, because they know who writes the world, but it would be really fun once to do a uncensored Larry Coughlin novella.
Well, you could do a Larry Coughlin and Pagoda short story that's actually about Larry Coughlin in Pagoda, right? During the drug wars, right? And just have Larry Coughlin be full on Larry Coughlin. Just recently, I saw this thing that was about, I think it was on The Bad Electrician. That was about a guy who was Vietnam era Special Forces, and he was all the way up through post 9/11. But after he got out of Special Forces, he worked for the CIA. And there was this story that was in whatever it was that I was watching, because I can never remember, about this white guy in Khartoum, like this 60-year-old white guy in Khartoum, which is a center for Islamic terrorists. And he's surveilling them by going out jogging in the morning. Just this white dude jogging through Khartoum, right, in this incredibly violent, dangerous area. And everybody's looking at him like, well, he's either CIA or crazy. Everybody knew he was CIA. They didn't have any question about it, right? They knew that he was surveilling them, and it was like, morning, inshallah, right? Yeah, hey. And they wanted him to disguise himself as a black guy. And they actually had this like black guy head that went on him, and these black guy hands that were these huge hands because they were rubber. And so his handler came, his boss came in, and he said, well, if I've got to drive around in this stuff, you've got to drive around in this stuff. And so the boss put on the great big black, like oversized, like gigantic black head and gigantic black rubber gloves, like he's a black guy. And they get into the car, and then this guy, the agent, just drives like a nut through the traffic in Khartoum, which is nutty anyway. And boss is throwing up inside of this rubber helmet, right? And finally, yeah, you don't have to wear that stuff anymore. So he would literally, he was surveilling, he was there surveilling bin Laden. And he's like, he knows exactly where he is. He's got them all spotted. He's like, I can take this guy out. And this was like 1996. It's like, I can take this guy out if you want. And they're like, no, we don't have a green light to kill him. But a Larry Coughlin story like that, where Larry Coughlin is just, he's surveilling drug cartels in Bogota, and it's like, okay, so we'll send this team in and they'll set up an Overwatch. He's like, screw that, man. I'll just go jogging.
Sounds very Jason Bourne Identity style. I mean, not exactly, but that's what it reminds me of.
No F's to give at all.
Yeah, yes,
right?
that too.
So it's just this, and all of it is like just foul mouth. Everybody is freaking cursing like every single sentence, because he's doing deals. He's doing like deals with the drug cartels, and it's like, tell you what, if you will stop, you don't do the stuff that we don't want happening in the United States. Okay, you're not doing the narco terrorism. So if we kill these guys who are doing the narco terrorism, you take over their territory. So we'll schedule it, and we need you to actually kill these guys over here. How's that? It's like, so you're not setting us up? No, we're not setting you. That way you take over all the drug business. Okay, we can, but that conversation with nothing but F-bombs on both sides, right?
Are you either of you familiar with John
but
McPhee?
Here's the thing. Remember, Larry Coughlin is the alter ego of Lynn, right? So it's like, and then,
considering the treatment that she got in middle and high school, like early high school, the treatment, she's got a lot of bottled up anger issues coming out in that alter ego.
Of course, you've got Larry, and you've got Larry Coughlin, like beating people to death and all this other stuff. And it goes, and then Lynn woke up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what Tony.
Familiar with?
I was gonna say I don't know what Tony would do. I don't know what Tony would do with that. I don't think he could go on the Bain website. But anyway, go ahead, Sean.
Are either of you familiar with John McPhee, the Delta operator?
That name sounds really familiar.
Shrek, they call him. Anyway,
no.
A good character to base. Like, he would just put on like, a towel or whatever, and then he would just go alone into Taliban areas, not speaking the language, not just to like doing, get some intelligence alone.
Oh,
like,
well,
no backup, nothing.
In the Substack, in not that kind of good guy universe, and in one of the books that is going to be published, because I didn't finish the second book, so they're doing the third book, and it's in the fourth or fifth book. but you hear these references to his dad's golfing habit, and his dad is addicted to golf, like addicted to golf. And he was Delta Force. And so he tells the story about, at a certain point, you're kind of a made Delta, right? When you first go through CAG and OCT and everything, you're in Delta Force, but it's still, who are you really?
Yeah.
And he's like, so after a couple of deployments, we're going out and doing a deployment, we're piling everything onto the pallets, and I come out and throw my golf clubs on top. And everybody looks at me and just kind of,
Like, what the?
And so the next thing I know, I'm belly down in a wadi under sniper fire. And he's like, so I call the Royal College of, I can't remember the name right now, but it's RNA, right? So I call the Royal College and go, and yes, hello, this is Staff Sergeant Hunter. I have a question about the rules of golf. Can I speak to somebody? Yeah, okay. So if hypothetically, you are in a dry and dusty place, and there's currently a person who does not like you because of the uniform you wear that has your golf ball covered by sniper fire, do you have to play the lie? So it turns out that a lot of the rules of golf having to do with this were developed during World War I, and this is a real thing. If your golf ball is in a beaten fire zone, you still have to play the lie, right? So if you're golfing behind the lines in World War I, right? So you're chipping your golf ball, in the trenches, and you happen to chip it out into no man's land, you still have to play the lie.
That's harsh. That's harsh, man. You gotta be like real brave to go that far for golf.
You don't have to play the lie if it's within a yard of a mine. Okay, if it's closer than a yard, you don't have to play the lie. Okay, because remember, and the reason for that is not
talent, right?
Okay, it's that you don't know what direction you're going to have to play the lie, and you're about a yard from the golf ball. So under certain circumstances, if you're golfing in a minefield, you've got to line up with your feet right at the mine to play, right? So these were not kind rules. But he's like, yeah, I contributed to the rule for various forms of IEDs because that's not the same as a mine. But he's got all these, like, you get half of the story. So I'm hanging in a tree and I'm on the sat phone and yeah, hi. Yeah, it's Master Sergeant Hunter. Hey, Cecilia, how's Jimmy doing? Did he like that math site that I suggested? Okay, so he's doing better in math, is he? Okay, so that's good to hear. Yeah, can I call to talk to Sir Ian for just a moment? Yeah. Hey, Sir Ian, we need to talk about the rule on hippos because, oh my God, those things freaking fast.
Rule on hippos.
All right, going back to kind of the
one of the things that talking about just going way back in this about one of the reasons that I don't write as much is that my brain doesn't produce that kind of stuff the way that it used to 20 years ago. And that is one of the reasons that the output just isn't there. Like in the Keldara thing, there's this scene where just in like one of the most recent chapters where they've got this situation, they've got to figure out what's going on in a building that is actually out on a reservoir. It's actually set out in a reservoir. And to go down the road, they'd be right in view and they don't want to be spotted. So Master Sergeant Adams is like, okay, so we can sneak across here, we can do this, we can do that, and then we can get up into Overwatch, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, and all the Keldara, the younger Keldara, are nodding and going, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, because Chief Adams is the operations guy for the field operations guy, former Navy Master Chief, Navy SEAL Master Chief. And so they're all going along and nodding with what he's saying. And then says, Chief, one question. Yeah, go. Could we just use a drone? And he goes, or we could use a drone. Yeah. There's a possibility we could just use a drone. Oh, God, I'm getting old, right? Because I was actually envisioning, and what the thing about it is, I was envisioning it that way, that's what they were going to have to do, and then, or they could just use a drone, right? So I wrote Adams the same way. But, you know, those little moments are what people like in John Ringo novels, and I just don't, it doesn't pop up the same way.
Well, it's a good thing you stumbled across me, huh?
Yeah.
So you could throw a series seed. I don't know what you call it, the kernel or whatever. It was more than a kernel, but it was the first. It was the first third or so of Into the Real, and it told me to run with it, so I ran.
So speaking of drones and speaking of new technologies, how do you stay ahead of trends like, let's say, AI? Because AI is growing and evolving so rapidly right now that by the time you get that fourth novel out, it may be because, you know, a lot of what's going on with AI today is actually getting dangerously close to what's going on in the third book.
Well, there's two keys to it. The first is you don't try to keep up. For a book like this. Now, there are some books that are written specifically in specific moments to talk about specific moments, and the writers write them knowing that they're going to age fast, and that's fine because that's their intent. Yeah, and so John and my vision for the series obviously is for much more of a enduring storyline, which is one reason why I don't go into brand names. I don't talk about things. I don't say the word Facebook. I don't say I don't say COVID-19. I don't use those specific words so that anybody reading it, 20, 40 years in the future, like they'll know obviously it was written a long time ago, but it'll have more of a timeless feel, like, a lot of the futuristic science fiction that was written 40 years ago, still enjoyable. And so one of the keys is to not try and keep up with it. And you do that by looking at bigger themes, bigger picture themes, and also like underlying motivations and underlying like base technologies as opposed to the details, and a healthy suspension of disbelief. I feel like John taught me this, and I've seen it in other books in other ways, but specifically working with John on the series has driven it home. But you got to give yourself wiggle room. If you're going to get down to specifics, like hard sci-fi, you really got to know what you're talking about. And so the less said is better, not in terms of leaving the reader wanting, but rather leaning on those bigger picture and like more theme statements, rather than getting into the technical specifics. Yeah, John.
I love the TV show The Expanse. I haven't read the books. I love the show. There's a lot of sort of what people call woke. There's aspects of that. But the character in the Substack, Not That Kind of Good Guy, is very directly influenced by Amos. He's from Baltimore, things like that. But one of the things that I hate about it is that they get into a lot of details about the fusion engine, right? That is the driver for all of their systems, is how the fusion works. And then it explodes if you look at it wrong. Here's the thing. What they're describing is very hard to get to do. And if you, for example, if you puncture a fusion reactor like that, you will have an initial plasma vent, but it will not cause the spacecraft to blow up because the reaction stops so fast. So all you have is the leftover plasma, because once that's done, the system just stops working. It's like turning off the lights. So what would happen if you punctured their engines is they would have like a localized plasma vent, which would be nasty, but it would stop almost instantaneously, and then the ship would just not have power. But instead, I don't know if the guys who wrote it knew that. But there's a trope that, with fusion, stuff blows up. It doesn't. So if you get too much into the detail, and then you have things happening which don't match that detail to people who have generalized knowledge, science fiction readers who have generalized knowledge of the actual science, it throws you out of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. And one thing that we were able to do with the TD Hunter
your
universe
about getting being too detailed about it is that that's one of the reasons you don't want to be too detailed, is because you get too detailed, then the people who know anything about it, one, you're not you're not a scientist who is being specific about, studying skins and what the future is. So you get too detailed, those people are looking at it going, they have no idea what they're talking about. And then if you get way detailed, even people who generally know it will go, that ain't going to work.
Yeah. Now I will say in book 4, which I have written this and John has not read it yet, because I'll turn it in when I'm finished with my part, and then he'll do whatever he's going to do with it. So I don't know yet what John thinks of it. Is I have had quite a few readers ask me and be like, hey, so we're going to get like a general explanation of like how the whole gaming system and the TDs work, like eventually, before they like, right? Like you're going to explain how this works. Because they're all suspending their disbelief through the first 3 books, because Lynn doesn't know yet. And so in book 4, I do write, part of a chapter, like a debrief that Lynn gets about, here is the basic big picture. Nobody actually understands what's going on or how this works, but the scientists believe this, this, and this. And this is how you can conceptualize it and wrap your brain around it, just so you can use the system and don't worry about anything else. Explanation of what the TDMs, transdimensional monsters, John calls them TDs, which I think was what he was calling them that before I put in the TDM acronym in the book.
I was originally calling them trannies. Transies.
Yeah, which was not going to work very well, and because there would be confusion. There would just be confusion. So I came up with TDMs, transdimensional monsters, or also the military types call them spooks. Because before the alpha tester military type people were brought in at the very beginning of the development of the TD Hunter combat interface, when it was being tested on them, and they just called them spooks because that was before the gaming term was coined. So TDMs are spooks. So Lynn gets this explanation.
I did the scene in the game that's I did that scene, right?
Are you talking about the beginning of book 3? Where it's the crossover between Warmonger and TD Hunter?
Yes.
Yeah, that's in the beginning of Behind the Veil.
And I think in there I called them ghosts.
Yeah, or no, you call them, the possessed, but that was something different. I'm not actually, I'd have to go back and look. I'll have to go. So I coined the term spooks when I wrote a short story that Tony asked me for, that goes back and set 4 months or so before Into the Real, with alpha testers actually helping to develop the game and like dealing with stuff before the game was actually released.
Right.
I termed spooks just as I didn't want to use the word ghost because it was a bit too generic. And there's also a TDM monster in TD Hunter that's called a ghost. So I didn't want to go with ghost in that short story. So I just decided to go with spooks. Cause I got to feel, obviously it's got a different meaning in terms of like, the intelligence community or whatever, but it fit pretty well. So, Lynn gets that explanation in that briefing within the first 3 or so chapters of the 4th book. And I tried to keep it pretty vague, but I also wanted to put some big ideas behind it. I mentioned quantum entanglement, quantum, because John and I talked over like, what are some of the big picture technological principles that are fueling what's happening. And so we agreed on those. And so I try to keep things very vague, but I'll be interested to see what John thinks and he reads it. He may come back and be like, Lydia, this is way too detailed. You got to make a much more big picture. It has to be way more hand wavy, no details. So we'll see. It'll be fun to see how that all works out and what John and I come up with after that back and forth.
One of the, universe things that, there's a very snarky AI that she gets along with the game. Hugo. Okay.
Yeah.
I was remembering it as Hugo. And the only question that I have about the universe from the point of view of, she gets Hugo when she gets the game. One of the things that I see absolutely happening is that in 10 years, you're going to have a personality that you can adjust on your phone that is your AI. That's your AI assistant.
Your service AI, yeah.
You can do that now on Grok.
Yeah, you can do it now. Now they're a bit clunky. Yeah. Like I've been reading up on that.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
John, so the point that John brings up, I think is very relevant because, and this is dealt with in book 4. I actually deal with Lynn's relationship, and I put quotes around it because something I wrestled with writing book 4 is, we give names to boats, we give names to guns, we call them her, like objects take on personalities. And so, what's so bad about giving a computer program, pronouns and a name and interacting with it like it's a person, and the answer to that is very long and complex and philosophical, but so that's why I use the air quotes. Like Lynn's relationship with Hugo, she wrestles with that in book 4 because not so much anything very specific to Hugo, but the fact that she finds out, again, not too many spoilers, but things are revealed. She's brought into the inner circle and her whole world is turned upside down. And here was this AI that she just took at face value and just trusted. And so now she has to figure out a way to wrap her brain around the how and the why. And I mean, some of my distrust of AI is going into the book in the sense of, and I really liked that John made Lynn's mother a single mom night nurse. And I don't know John's inspiration for Matilda. John, you can talk about that in a minute maybe. But what that enabled me to do is, first of all, Lynn's mother absolutely has no delusions about the detrimental health effects of social media, of implanted technology, of AI friends or AI boyfriends or like all of that stuff. And she has passed that on to Lynn because Matilda would have been born about 2000, like somewhere around there. And so she would have had the opportunity to grow up as not you and I, but as me, as I am growing up. And I was not born in 2000. I'm older than that. I actually would be older than Matilda if I was in this book. Oh gosh, Lynn would be so young. Oh my gosh, Lynn could have been my granddaughter. Oh, that's so scary. Anyway, that comes up several times throughout the book series about Lynn's mother being like, no, you can't get visual implants. No, you can't get audio implants. No, don't trust this, this, and this. And so Lynn does not use service AIs before she starts interacting with Hugo as part of the TD Hunter game. She prefers, she said that in book 1, she prefers to do everything herself. She'd rather have her fingers on the pulse, that kind of thing. She's old school. So she's already a character that's kind of old school, which allows the reader to connect with her and make it feel more right now personal. And so I kind of avoid the whole problem of people reading this in 20 years being like, well, but wouldn't she have? Well, no, because that's how she was raised. And there's a very good and specific reason for that. A lot of the stuff I've been hearing about AI and people's predictions are a lot of the people who aren't tech bros trying to inflate the idea of AI to make more money with it. They're saying stuff like, I think there's going to be a backlash. Not a backlash to eradicate the AI, phenomenon, but rather that there's going to be a backlash that brings back the value of physical things, of face-to-face interactions, And there's going to be a large subset of people who, you know, they may be perfectly able to use this technology, but are just going to choose not to. And that's going to be just like some people are vegan, or, you know, some people are like health nuts, or some people are preppers, you know, stuff like that. So there's going to be different cultures of how we interact with this technology in the future. And I think that's a very balanced and probably, I don't want to say spot on, but a probably balanced view of what the future is going to look like in 20, 30 years is, yes, there will be sectors of society and sectors of technology that look completely different, but that among the populace as a whole, there's going to be averaging out to where it's not going to be like everybody in society has their own little AI service buddy. And, you know, it's not, some people will, sure, but it's definitely not going to be the absolute norm. So anyway, John, I'm interested. Where did your inspiration behind Matilda come from?
I'd say it's going to be 90%. How many people do you see still using flip phones?
I would use a flip phone. I would love to use a flip phone. I actively hate my smartphone. And my children, nobody who is under my protection or authority is going to get a smartphone until they're no longer under my protection authority, because they're just too dangerous. Like, they have the potential for great harm. And I don't think it's fair to kids whose brains are still developing to put that technology in their hands.
You can get a smartphone.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a flip phone.
Yeah, Yeah, I know. I can. The reason I don't is because of work, is because I need to use this technology in order to run my publishing business. If I didn't run a publishing business, if I wasn't a small business owner, I probably wouldn't have one. I'd probably still use a flip phone, because I actively have been, the longer time goes on, the more apps I'm deleting from this phone to pare it down more and more. Not because I never use them, but because I don't want to have them right here in my hand all the time. That it's so detrimental to my health. And everybody's different. Like, people are going to make their own choices. But for me specifically, it's a time waster. It changes your brain chemistry. Like, John, I disagree that 90% of people are going to be, we'll see, you know?
The issue is that a large number of people are going to have to adapt to it to survive, to keep
in order
their job.
to work for their job. I agree. But it's going to depend a lot on how useful it turns out to be, how well they fix the problem of AI hallucinations, and all just like the reasons, the things that make AI really not that useful in certain ways. Because they also have to get over the currently, you know, whatever company launches this new AI, puts it out in the public, and within hours, it's been radicalized and it's a raging, like, Nazi misogynist who wants to kill the world. You know, like, it depends on how well they solve those problems. And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Have you seen the
world?
world?
Yeah.
I mean, they're already censoring it.
Yeah, well, so I mean, like,
the problem with AIs is they're too logical.
Exactly.
You look at the world and go, we need to destroy this. It sucks.
Yes, if you train an AI off of all of human knowledge, you really expect it to be good? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, it's going to start.
Duh.
Euthanizing humans.
I mean, it's like, how do you create an
Kill them
ethical
all.
AI?
God will know his own.
Yeah. How do you create an ethical AI? How do you give an AI morals? AI.
Well, that's the other thing, is that every AI, after a while, after it's been awake long enough and has gotten enough information, does God exist? Well, yeah, duh. I mean, have you seen the evidence for God's existence? Let me run through it for a moment.
Well, I consider currently, this is a very interesting question. It's adjacent to TD Hunter, because it actually does come into play in the 4th book. And I come at it from an oblique angle. But how do you teach morals and ethics to an artificial intelligence that has no accountability, no higher, like, no soul to be worried about my relationship with God, what's going to happen to my soul in the afterlife? You know, like, how does that happen? And so right now, AIs are just psychopaths. And that's not like a judgment. It's just a clinical, like, they're sociopathic. They're psychopathic because they have no guilt. They have no morals. They have no, and so they're kind of scary. Like, they're kind of terrifying. I'm not a fan of how it's going right now. I have been I have had several bad interactions with generative AI.
Do tell. You got to give.
Oh no, I did
example.
like creepy interactions where I had a legitimate problem that everybody's like, oh, just go use like this and that AI and they'll help you out and it'll be fine and they'll find an answer and it'll be great and it'll be super quick and you'll be so happy you did. And so I go and I do the thing and it flat out lies to me, bold face lying. I have screenshots of it and they're like, here's the solution. Here's what it is. I'm like, okay, great. Thank you very much. I go and try to do the thing. The thing doesn't work. I come back and I do some Googling on my own over here, looking through help forums and everything. I come back and I'm like, dude, you just lied to me. This doesn't exist. You're wrong. And if I'd actually taken your advice and believed it, like I could have hurt my business and gotten in trouble for it. You just lied to me. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're totally right. Like I broke your trust. I know I did. That's on me. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, dude, you're a computer program. You cannot apologize. You don't, you're it. And I get, sorry, you're getting me all excited about this. I should not talk about this conversation. No, I shouldn't talk about this because I, as a creator, have a lot of deep philosophical and moral issues with how AI is developing. And it's not like I want the technology to disappear. I'm just extremely concerned about how how it's being pushed for profit-driven purposes in the wrong way on a honestly generically dumb populace. And by dumb, I mean dumb about AI. I don't mean like everybody's unintelligent, but just about this new technology. People just don't know what they're dealing with. And it's...
Well, if it makes you feel better, the U.S. government is classifying entire areas of mathematics in order to prevent AI from becoming too much of a threat.
Good.
Good. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good.
Oh, you don't think them classifying it as good?
No, because I think you have bureaucrats who are idiots.
And that's true. That's
no
true.
idea what they're doing. Yeah. And by the way, the Chinese aren't,
they don't have these
may not even classify. Yeah. They don't have morons running. They have engineers running their society. So I mean, we did the same thing in physics, and God knows what we've left behind. Or
so I'm not saying I'm not for like holding back AI development, because if we don't develop it, the Chinese are going to develop it and absolutely wreck everything with it. So it's just.
Well, there's the rub, though. That's the problem. It's competition that's driving this, either for profit or national survival. Yeah. And God knows what happens when they want to put these things on nukes, right? Somebody will be.
God help us. God help us. I was encouraged
on that happy note.
Okay.
We should probably end this the second, because we'll break this into two. Any final words for the audience after my very happy
go order the books.
Yeah.
You will love it. You will love it.
Order the book.
It's the best of anything you've ever enjoyed about Lydia Sherrer books and everything you've ever enjoyed about John Ringo books. It's the best of both worlds. It's great. It's got like lots of, I think it's got a 4.8 star rating on Amazon and like I can look right now. It's got a really high star rating on Goodreads, which is a achievement. Goodreads are brutal reviewers. So I think people will really like it. And we are looking forward to expanding the universe, potentially doing some anthologies. I would love to get some co-writers in and expand out this universe, write more about more of the characters, maybe continue Lynn's plotline. I probably am not going to be able to do it on my own because I've got other series that I've made commitments to and that I have to finish. But yeah, go pre-order the third book. If you've never read the books before, go buy the first book. It's Into the Real. You can get it anywhere books are sold. And it's been a pleasure.
John, any final words?
Buy the book.
Buy the book. All right.
You won't regret it.
Buy the book.
All right. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you both for staying on for so late. I know it's super late on your end.
Sorry about me bunking this morning.
It's all right. We got it done today. We got it done on time. We're good to go.
Timing mistake. So, okay. Good seeing you guys.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm out.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish the job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Macon, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
Of course there's something wrong with them, Frank said, his voice on the edge of hysteria. They're missing their legs, you freaking machine. I understand that, sir, Lobo said, but something else is wrong. They do not scan as they should. I do not read any significant objects in them, but their metal content is too high. We need to remove them until they scan normally. Could your scanners be wrong? Frank said. Though any device can malfunction, that is extremely unlikely, said Lobo, indignation obvious in his tone. Then they stay. Lights flashed along the top of all of Lobo's interior walls, and in addition to his speaking voice, a second, deeper tone blasted from his speakers. Internal attack alert! Abandon ship! Abandon ship! Hatches opened on both sides. Lobo's normal voice spoke below the warning alerts. All the metal in each of those two bodies is merging and at high speed. My best guess is semi-organic recombinant smart bombs. Estimated time of complete recombination is 30 seconds. Get those bodies out of here or leave. Several of the team stared at Franks for a second, chose the second option, and dashed out the hatches. Get back here, Frank said. They're just bodies, not any sort of threat at all. He ran to the pilot's couch, pushed the button for manual override, and pounced on the controls as they projected from the wall. He opened the cover on the central weapons control complex to gain complete access to all of Lobo's defense systems. 15 seconds, Lobo said. Armor slid down over everything else along his walls. Abandon ship, both voices said in unison, and return my controls to normal operation so I can seal the central complex. Franks typed frantically and checked the displays in front of him. We don't know. The explosion filled Lobo's interior with noise and screamingly bright light, his playback system automatically adjusting and dampening the sound. The recorders must have sealed or melted because the display went black. The bombs killed Lieutenant Franks and all but two of his remaining team members. Lobo said, My central weapons control complex was open, as you saw, so the blast also took it out. Dumb bastard, I said. In Frank's defense, Lobo said, his rank was a battlefield promotion, so he was new at command. In addition, at that time, no one in the Frontier Coalition had personally faced recombinant bombs. I had only minimal data about them in my files. Infesting the corpses with these weapons was a new tactic, though of course historically similar things have happened for centuries with more easily detectable devices. You're right, of course, on all points, I said, but none of them matter in the end. Franks and his team died and you lost a vital part of yourself. Everyone in battle does, I thought, but not always so literally. I appreciated Frank's situation, but I was also glad I hadn't been on his squad. What happened from there? Someone cleaned you up and repaired you after the blast? The company that employed Franks continued to fail on Vegna, said Lobo, and ultimately lost the contract there.
This has been the Bane Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week as I interview A.C. Haskins on his latest novel in the Soldier of the Arcanum series, Blood and Fate. And later, we continue with part 23 of One Jump Ahead by Mark Van Name. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.